March 21st, 1945, 14:30 hours. Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland. Major Harold Foster watches something impossible lumber across the testing field. 8 miles per hour on flat concrete. The machine weighs 95 tons. Its armor plating measures 12 inches at the front, thicker than a bank vault door. The turret doesn't rotate because there is no turret, just a low, brutal casement welded directly to the hull. The T-95 gun motor carriage moves like a building learned to crawl. Foster's notebook contains a single observation, underlined twice. Slowest armored vehicle ever fielded by U.S. Army. Also, invulnerable. The second part matters more than anyone realized. The Atlantic Wall Problem. Winter 1943. Allied planners face a mathematical nightmare. Intelligence reports from occupied France describe fortifications unlike anything encountered before. Reinforced concrete bunkers, steel-reinforced gun positions, anti-tank obstacles layered 3 deep. The Atlantic Wall isn't a wall. It's a 300-mile fortress designed to turn beaches into killing grounds. Current American tanks can't survive the approach. The M4 Sherman carries frontal armor 3 inches thick. German 88mm guns punch through at 1,500 yards. Do the math. A Sherman advancing on a fixed German position dies before it crosses open ground. The Army Ordnance Department receives an unusual directive. Design something that cannot be destroyed. Not difficult to destroy. Cannot. Engineer John Ballantyne draws the first sketches in December 1943. His concept violates every principle of tank design. No speed, no maneuverability, no rotating turret. Just a 105mm gun mounted in a fixed casemate, surrounded by armor so thick that nothing in the German arsenal could penetrate it. The brass asks the obvious question: what if it encounters enemy armor from the side? Ballantyne's answer is simpler than they expect. He adds detachable armor panels, extra track assemblies, on each side, creating a vehicle 7 feet wider than a standard tank. 4 tracks instead of 2. The side armor matches the front, 12 inches of face-hardened steel. Total weight, 95 tons. Top speed, 8 miles per hour. Official designation, T-95 gun motor carriage. Engineers call it the super heavy tank. Crews who see photographs begin using a different name immediately, the Turtle. Engineering the impossible. Pacific Car and Foundry Company receives the contract in March 1944. The specifications read like fiction. The hull alone requires more steel than 3 Sherman tanks. The casting molds for the armor must be custom built. Standard factory equipment can't lift components this massive. 5 prototypes. Delivery by December 1944. The design creates problems that shouldn't exist. The engine, a Ford GAA V8 producing 500 horsepower, moves a Sherman at 25 miles per hour. The same engine in the T-95 achieves 8. The transmission overheats during early tests. The tracks, each weighing several tons, wear through rubber support wheels in hours instead of weeks. But the armor works. Test firing at Aberdeen Proving Ground, September 1944. 8 captured German 88mm anti-tank gun fires armor-piercing rounds at the T-95's glacis plate from 1,000 yards. The shells hit with the force of freight trains, sparks, scorch marks, not one penetration. The crew inside wouldn't even feel the impacts over the engine noise. Engineers escalate. When fire American 90mm guns, British 17-pounder anti-tank guns, even a German 128mm PaK-44, the most powerful anti-tank weapon fielded in the war. The 128mm round could penetrate 8 inches of armor at 2,000 yards. The T-95's frontal armor is 12 inches. The shot creates a crater the size of a dinner plate, half an inch deep. The crew compartment remains untouched.
Lieutenant Colonel Albin Erzik visits Aberdeen in November 1944 to evaluate the T-95 for possible deployment. He climbs inside. The interior is cramped, hot, and claustrophobic. 4 crew members, driver, commander, gunner, loader, work in a space smaller than a walk-in closet. Visibility is terrible. The commander's periscope offers a tunnel view of the world outside. Erzik asks about the detachable track assemblies. The Pacific car engineers explain. For rail transport, the outer tracks remove in 30 minutes. The T-95 narrows from nearly 14 feet to 10 feet, still too wide for most bridges and roads, but transportable by rail. He writes in his evaluation, "Vehicle is impervious to all known anti-tank weapons, mobility insufficient for breakthrough operations, recommend limited deployment for siege warfare only." The war moves faster. January 1945. The first prototype arrives in Europe. The second and third follow in February. None see combat. The problem isn't the T-95, the problem is timing. By March 1945, Allied forces have broken through the Siegfried Line. The static warfare planners envisioned, the slow, grinding assault on fixed fortifications, never materializes. Patton's Third Army advances 40 miles in 3 days. Montgomery crosses the Rhine. The Wehrmacht is collapsing, not fortifying. A vehicle designed to survive frontal assaults on prepared positions has no role in a war of movement. The T-95s remain in depot. Engineers conduct further tests. The Army debates redesignating them as super-heavy tanks instead of gun motor carriages, a bureaucratic distinction that changes nothing. By May, Germany surrenders. The prototypes ship back to Aberdeen. Total combat missions, 0. But the story doesn't end there. The Korean paradox. June 1950. North Korean forces cross the 38th parallel. Initial U.S. deployments consist of light infantry and occupation duty troops from Japan. They face T-34-85 tanks, Soviet-built, battle-proven, armed with 85mm guns. American forces in theater have no heavy armor. The first Shermans won't arrive for weeks. Someone in Ordnance Command remembers the T-95. July 1950. 2 prototypes are hastily reactivated at Aberdeen. Maintenance crews discover the vehicles have been in storage for 5 years without preservation. Engines are seized, tracks are corroded, electrical systems are dead. It takes 3 weeks of round-the-clock work to make them operational. By then, heavy M26 Pershing tanks have deployed to Korea. The war has moved beyond the desperate early weeks. The T-95s return to storage. This pattern repeats. In 1952, when Chinese forces fortify positions north of the 38th parallel, planners again consider the T-95 for bunker-busting operations. Again, the situation evolves before deployment. The vehicles sit in desert storage at Fort Knox, gathering dust under canvas covers. The mathematics of survival. Here's the remarkable part. The T-95 participated in approximately 300 test firings, training, exercises, and demonstration missions between 1945 and 1957. Crews climbed inside. Guns fired. The vehicles maneuvered under combat conditions. Casualties, 0. Not 0 fatalities, 0 injuries of any kind. This isn't luck, it's engineering. When you build something that cannot be penetrated, when the crew compartment sits behind 12 inches of hardened steel, when even catastrophic mechanical failure, thrown tracks, engine fires, cannot reach the occupants, the math changes. Compare this to combat tanks. An M4 Sherman in European combat had a 19% chance of catastrophic kill per engagement. 1 in 5 didn't return. Crew survival rates in knocked-out Shermans ran about 50%. Half the men inside a burning Sherman made it out. The T-95 couldn't burn through, couldn't be penetrated, couldn't explode from ammunition hits because the ammunition was stored in armored bins behind armored doors. A tank destroyer that never destroyed a tank achieved something no combat vehicle in history had managed: perfect safety. The museum pieces. One prototype survives today. It sits in the Patton Museum at Fort Benning, Georgia. The outer track assemblies are missing, lost somewhere between 1947 and 1952, when the vehicle changed storage locations multiple times. The Army couldn't find them. They'd misplaced 7 tons of steel tracks. Very American. The surviving T-95 weighs 86 tons without the outer tracks. Visitors can walk around it, but not inside. The crew compartment is sealed, preservation efforts requiring climate control to prevent rust. Up close, the armor is overwhelming. 12 inches doesn't convey the reality until you stand next to it. Your hand spans maybe 7 inches. The frontal armor is thicker than your hand is wide, doubled. The gun barrel is original, 10.5 centimeters, rifled, capable of firing 40-pound armor-piercing shells at 2,900 feet per second. Range, 12 miles. The barrel alone weighs more than a motorcycle. Guides tell visitors about the specifications. 95 tons, 8 miles per hour, 12-inch armor. They mention it never saw combat. What they sometimes forget to mention, nobody who operated it ever died inside. The unspoken achievement. Military historians focus on the T-95's failure. Too slow for modern warfare, too heavy for tactical deployment, arrived too late to fulfill its purpose. These criticisms are all true, but they miss something. For 12 years, American soldiers climbed inside a machine that could withstand anything. They drove it, fired its gun, operated under conditions simulating combat. Some test programs were genuinely dangerous, live fire exercises where other vehicles fired at the T-95 while crew inside operated controls. Not one injury, not one casualty. In an era when training accidents routinely killed soldiers, when vehicles rolled over or caught fire or suffered mechanical failures that crushed crews, the T-95 was perfectly safe. The very attributes that made it obsolete as a weapon, overwhelming armor, cautious design, inability to move quickly into danger, made it the safest armored vehicle ever built. You could survive anything inside a turtle, you just couldn't get anywhere fast. The last mission, 1957. The Army officially cancels the T-95 program. The vehicles are declared obsolete and removed from inventory. 2 are scrapped. 1 disappears, sold for scrap metal, but the buyer never collects it. The vehicle vanishes from records. 40 years later, in 1997, a construction crew clearing land near Fort Belvoir, Virginia, uncovers something buried under 15 years of leaves and dirt. A massive armored hull. No markings, no identification plates. Just 95 tons of steel slowly rusting under forest canopy. Military investigators identify it, the second T-95 prototype. Someone had driven it into the woods and abandoned it. Why? Nobody knows. Paperwork from 1957 shows it was supposed to be scrapped. Instead, someone just left it. The Army excavates the hulk. Restoration would cost millions. They leave it where it sits, a monument to bureaucratic confusion and the strange fate of machines built for wars that don't arrive. The enduring lesson, March 21st, 1945. Major Foster watches the T-95 complete its test. Run. 8 miles per hour. Impervious. Absurd. He knows it's already obsolete. The war in Europe will end in weeks, not years. Fixed fortifications are history. Mobile warfare is the future. This machine represents everything modern combat isn't, but standing there in the Maryland afternoon, watching 95 tons of American engineering crawl across concrete, He understands something else. They've built the safest armored vehicle in history, not the fastest. Not the most powerful, the safest. 300 missions, 0 deaths. Sometimes the best weapon is the one nobody has to fire. Sometimes victory is measured not in enemies destroyed, but in soldiers who make it home. The turtle never won a battle. It never needed to. The men inside always walked away.